Reddit asks police officers, what's the dumbest thing you've ever seen a criminal do or say? I was police at the time. In the middle of the night my partner and I found a car in a cemetery. Stolen cars were dumped there regularly. The car had its windows down and it had only recently been left there. It was still warm to touch. It didn't flag up as stolen and through the window I could see a meth pipe in plain view. That gives us the ability to search the car. Inside we find a bunch of meth pipes, 3.5 grams of meth, a small amount of cannabis and a handgun. There was also a tablet/phone that was unlocked, and while we were searching the car the tablet kept on receiving messages from people trying to score meth. I had a quick look through the phone, and was able to figure out that the owner of the car had come out from the city. I worked rurally at the time, to make a score from one of the local gangs. But the gang didn't want her turning up, so arranged to meet her at the cemetery and conduct business somewhere else. I leave a business card under the wipers, not my card but the station's, and on the back I wrote that she, the owner of the car, should come down to the station if she wants to get her stuff back. And sure enough she did. At 9 the next morning, methed out, looking for her drugs and gun. So my personal favorite was when a bloke on a motorbike swerved in front of our squad car and crashed. We hopped out, picked the bike up off him, it was pinning his leg, and asked, "You alright mate?" To which he replied, "Of course I'm alright, what do you mean?" "Well you just fell off your bike mate." "No I didn't." He just kept insisting that there was no way he could have crashed, and it must have been someone else. Edit: for those concerned, it was a head injury. He did blow a .17 when tested, so we chalked it up to that. Friend who is an officer told me this one a little bit ago. He was driving near where a known car thief lived, so he stops by. SUV in the driveway with no tags. Walks up, runs the VIN, stolen. Now the property had a house on it, and then out back, a small mother-in-law suite where said thief lived. Officer walks out back, knocks, and then hears a car door. Officer starts running, engine starts, and yup, thief is driving away in the stolen SUV. Officer knows where he ditches stolen cars at, so has an officer stake out that area. Sure enough, 2 hours later the SUV rolls up with a Jeep following it. SUV driver wipes down the dash, wipes down the outside door handle and gets in the Jeep. Officer pulls them over and arrests them both. Why both? The Jeep is stolen. Officer runs her license, send another officer to her address, and guess what? She had a stolen car at her place too. 3 stolen cars recovered, 2 people in jail, all because one officer decided to stop by a thief's last address. I was waiting to report an incident at a local police station when a clearly distraught man came in wheezing and sweating. I wasn't in a rush, so I let him go ahead of me. "I've been robbed, they took everything," he exclaimed when he reached the counter. The officer working the desk asked him the usual what, where, why and how sort of questions. The gentleman proceeds to explain that he was a local meth dealer and he just got robbed of his entire stash while selling to some teens at the local train station. The officer just said that there's not anything they can do about that and it's in his best interest to just leave before more questions are raised and he incriminates himself further. He was fuming and stormed out of the place, slamming the door behind him. I reached the counter and made an offhand comment towards the office, "That must be a first for you." Apparently not. Apparently drug dealers often come in to report theft of their illicit substances. Not my story, but my police officer friends. He had gone in to arrest someone for dealing drugs. He was in full uniform, whilst someone else had already been in there undercover. The drug dealer looks at the undercover police officer and says, "You're undercover." "Yes." "Well done." He looks at my uniformed friend and says, "You're undercover too." He was not. Then he looks at someone else, not a police officer, and says, "And you?" Guy responds with, "How am I an undercover police officer? I just bought drugs off of you." And that's how they made an unexpected arrest at that raid. What a twist. 2 idiots for the price of 1. Not a police officer, but my father was a 911 dispatch operator. My dad was working one night and he gets a call from a man who is obviously drunk. "Dad, 911, what is your emergency?" Drunk: "Yeah. I think I just heard a red car crash." "Dad, you heard a red car crash?" Drunk: "Yeah." "Dad, okay, police are on their way." Click. My dad finds out later that this dude was driving drunk and crashed his car not far from his house. Guy decides to get out of his car, stumble home, and dial 911 to report the fact that he heard a car crash. In his drunken mind, he figured he'd report the crash as someone who heard it and he'd get off, somehow. But he had to specify the color, because apparently a red car crashing sounds different than a blue car crashing. Dad's a detective. Had a murder case where a dog walker found a severed head in a park. Over the rest of the morning they found a full set of chopped up body parts around that park. A trail of blood led from each part, and they followed them all the way back to a nearby house, in through the door and up the stairs to a room covered in blood with a guy asleep in a bed. Turns out this guy had got drunk with a friend, had an argument, killed him, chopped him up and hid his body parts in the park before passing out back at the house. Police caught him literally red-handed. Apparently he was really confused how they got him so quickly. I read a theft suspect her Miranda rights, to which she stated in a recorded interview, "I'm invoking my right to silence and a lawyer because I stole a lot of shit and I don't want to incriminate myself." Suspect was caught for drug possession, on the streets, and we were talking to the prosecutor to get a warrant for his house. Somehow, he managed to call his wife without our notice, and as we realized what happened we heard him saying, "Honey, go take the fish out of the fridge." After we've got the warrant and searched his house, there was his fridge full of speed, and the plate with fish, which his wife had prepared for his return, thrown in the trash. I stopped someone who was in the area of a load of theft from motor vehicles. After a bit of questioning I carried out a search and found numerous wallets, phones etc. He claimed that all of the cards were his, all 13 different identities. To be fair, he stuck to his story. He carried it all the way to court going not guilty. Okay then. Mr. Jones, you are under arrest for 12 counts of theft. Mr. Fletcher, you are also under arrest for 12 counts of theft. Mrs. Rodriguez, you are under arrest for 12 counts of theft. Stopped a lady for speeding 15 miles per hour over the limit. I asked what her reason could be for going so fast. She said, "I live here. You can't give me a speeding ticket. I live just down the street. I live here. This is unbelievable, I live here." I was pulled over for doing 65 miles per hour in a 30. Honestly didn't realize it. I had just left my dad's new house, new area, and it was like 11 p.m. Cop asked me why I was going so fast. I said I honestly have no excuse, I missed the speed limit signs I guess, and I was let go with a warning. All the people from To Catch a Predator. NBC has online transcripts, and they still come up with the stupidest excuses. Chris Hansen, "Sir, what else could you mean by asking the girl if she was a virgin and then telling her you wanted to penetrate her?" Predator, "I'm just here to watch football, man, she told me she was 18. Hansen, "In the transcripts you clearly say she's 13, you could get in trouble for this and ask her not to tell anyone." Motor vehicle stop. "License and registration please." Proceeds to lean over to the passenger seat, scoop up a handful of Lomine and tries to put it in the officer's hand. He was locked up for operating under the influence, 4th offense. To this day I still wonder if he thought he was passing his correct paperwork or if the Chinese food was some sort of peace offering. Was once behind a dude at KFC who was clearly off his rocker on something. He's holding a plastic bag, takes him 5 minutes just to get his order out to the lady. When she mentions how much it is he looks really confused, then opens the bag, reaches inside, and pulls out a round plastic lid and offers it to the lady. That's a container lid, sir." He just looks at the lid super confused and tries to offer it for a second time. Driving under the influence trial. Defendant chooses to represent herself. She tries to introduce evidence during the trial, but is quickly blocked by the prosecution. The judge, maybe taking pity on the flaming train wreck that was this woman's defense, asks to see the evidence. It was a receipt from the bar she left before I stopped her, that showed that she purchased 2 large margaritas. Her whole defense was, "I couldn't have been drunk after only 2 margaritas." She was found guilty. My initial reason for stopping her was that she drove down an embankment on the side of the road to get to a McDonald's drive-thru. Having worked drive-thru, I must unfortunately report that stone-cold sober people will drive over embankments to enter or exit the drive-thru. That's because you need to do a 3-point turn, reverse park without mirrors and a 4-dimensional barrel roll to successfully exit the drive-thru. Some of them are not well designed. These are my pants, but those are not my pockets. Can't make this shit up. That's all for this video. You made it to the end. If you enjoyed the video, Please consider subscribing so you know when the next videos are released. Thanks for watching, have a good one.